Ms. Holm, welcome.
Thank you. Chairman McGovern, Co-Chair Rubio, and members of the Commission, thank you for this opportunity. It's an honor for me to stand in solidarity with the frontline activists. I want to thank the Commission members for their critical support for the Hong Kong people and your leadership on the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act and the Protect Hong Kong Act. Over the past 3 months, the whole world has witnessed the historic David and Goliath standoff. And against all odds, the Hong Kong people are standing up to the powerful authoritarian regime in Beijing. In this historic battle, they are not only fighting for the democratic future of 7.4 million Hong Kong people, but they're holding the regional and global front line on preserving human dignity and rights for all people. As Congressman McGovern has already mentioned, the past summer of discontent is in fact part of years of ongoing resistance by the Hong Kong people against Beijing's encroachment on Hong Kong's autonomy, rights, and freedom. The mass demonstrations in the past have included resistance against security legislation, official brainwashing initiatives, and the gutting of the promised genuine universal suffrage. After the clearance of the occupied central sites, democracy activists left a promise inscribed on the concrete sidewalks: "We will return." They have kept that promise. Instead of Beijing's hope for movement fatigue, the protests, supported by unflagging solidarity and broad, diverse participation of Hong Kong society, are moving into the 15th week, pressing for now 5 non-negotiable demands. The out-of-control, lawless actions of the Hong Kong police have provided mobilization fuel for Hong Kong people to add oil. As Chairman Mao said, wherever there is suppression, there will be resistance. And at the beginning of the Cultural Revolution, he also said, anyone who crushes the student movement will not have a good ending. I want to talk about the rule of law just briefly because there are tensions that were baked into the one country, two systems framework, making one country, one system, or 1.5 system perhaps an inevitable outcome. Taiwan's president, Tsai Ing-wen's takeaway from the current political crisis hits the nail on the head. Not only is one country, two systems not a viable model for Taiwan, but the Hong Kong example proves that dictatorship and democracy cannot coexist. An independent functioning rule of law is essential, yet the Chinese state constitution and numerous high-level policy pronouncements legitimizes the subordination of law to the leadership of the party. The reintroduction of the Article 23 legislation that's in the works in Hong Kong will inevitably carry imprints of the party's concepts of national security. Second, the demand for complete loyalty to the party guts the independence of key pillars of rule of law, legal profession, and the media. But Hong Kong is not the mainland yet. Despite efforts like the proposed Hong Kong national anthem law and proposed loyalty requirements, loyalty, pride, and love cannot be legislated. So it's not surprising that Hong Kong people, foreign business, and the international community have been alarmed. The outrageous and painful excessive violence and abuse of law by the police have already been extensively described. I will move to then talking about what's at stake in terms of the universal values. China's aggressive activism at the UN is undermining international standards, weakening the existing human rights mechanisms, and restricting the participation of independent civil society. This cuts Hong Kong people, as well as human rights defenders on the mainland and Tibetan and Uyghur communities, from the key international platforms that's available to press for accountability. With this, instead of the West's hope for convergence, China is not only playing by the rules, it is vocally and persistently asserting a set of relativist criteria that it alone can apply and pushing for Chinese models of human rights, democracy, and development. That is, no human rights, no development, and no democracy. This rhetoric helps to intimidate, silence, and deflect from the accountability of the state. I want to point quickly to its role in blocking independent voices. China sits on the ECOSOC committee of the UN, and Gongos, who do not face any objections, such as the interruptions of Denise Ho's recent intervention at the Human Rights Council. The intervention last week by Patsy Ho, the representative of the Hong Kong Federation of Women, is illustrative. She not only defended the SAR government's handling of the protests, but she accused the Hong Kong protesters of child exploitation and more. Patsy Ho, co-chairman and director of Macau Casino Operation, and is also a standing committee member of the Beijing Municipal Committee of the Chinese People's Consultative Conference. Because I am out of time, I want to really take the time to jump ahead to the problem of in addition to the disinformation campaign, including the egregious use by the China Daily on 9/11 of a photo depicting the destruction of the World Trade Towers to warn of terrorist attacks by Hong Kong protesters. Beijing is advancing a narrative of violence to frame the Hong Kong protests that is echoed uncritically by the international community. Within this framework, the Hong Kong police, protected in full tactical gear, armed with rubber bullets, guns, tear gas, pepper spray, and batons, wielding the coercive power of the state, is presented as one side of an escalating violence, clashes with civilian protesters. Hence, we hear both sides calls to de-escalate, but this deflects attention away from police accountability for its excessive use of force and its complicity with non-state violence. Moreover, the narrow violence framing of the situation on the ground is erasing or marginalizing intentionally the proliferation of diverse, creative, and peaceful protests by the Hong Kong people, including by students in boycotts, elderly citizens, silver-hair volunteers protecting the children actions, Hong Kong people singing in the malls, in the metro stations, in neighborhood gatherings, shouting the 10 p.m. shouts of slogans echoing throughout all the neighborhoods in Hong Kong, and forming human chains, creating Lenin walls. And last Friday was Mid-Autumn Festival, and a small family-owned bakery in Saiwan made mooncakes with protest slogans. And in typical humorous Hong Kong fashion, Hong Kongers are creating art. This is what is happening on the ground. Hong Kong people are practicing democracy and exercising their freedoms for as long as possible. Hong Kongers are making the road by walking it. That is the real revolution already underway. Thank you again, and I look forward to your questions.
Well, thank you very much.